minutes past, which will be a good time to start. I'd like to welcome Navi here today, and his wife Jayashree. You're very welcome here today, and you're welcome as members of the Hindu community. World Trinity Hospice aims to care for everybody regardless of the way that we see the world, but actually to do the converse of that, to be able to include the way that we see the world to better the care that we have for people. And so this is one of the reasons that I'm very happy that you said yes to come and speak to us about the care of the Hindu patient within our community. We have people attending with us in the room. There may be a few more people coming in and out, so there may be a bit of a disturbance. And there's a few people who are joining us online as well. We've agreed that I would have a bit of a discussion with you, asking some questions which we've thought through together. Yeah. Which will take about half an hour or so, and thereafter to open it up to questions that anybody here may have, as well as anybody who is online. Afterwards, sorry for everybody who's online, we have lovely food to eat, which is actually another reason to be here. I asked that we wait till the end of the session for it, so that your appetite may be increased even more by then. Just to say that the session has been recorded, is being recorded, but the camera itself is focused on the two of you and not on anybody else in the room. Okay. So you've asked to start perhaps by prayer first. Oh, yes. And thereafter, you've asked if everybody else here could just introduce themselves so you have a sense of who is joining us physically. Good. Thank you. So maybe you can just shift it down. The next page. The prayers haven't quite come out right because we have different literations which don't always agree with the computers or language. Wait a minute. So these prayers, thank you. These prayers are basically prayers to the Guru, the spiritual master, and to various saints from the Hindu tradition, and also to the Supreme Lords. So we can do it together. Om Gyanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuto Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatan Sagana Ragunatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Darsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyai Pacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namayo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Krishna Das Swami Tinamne Namayo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Vishatani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhattavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama So I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to especially thank Nicholas for making all the arrangements and
the sweet way you deal with everything and everyone. It's really amazing. So just a little background. I was born in a Jain family. Were we both born in Jain families? And when I was young, I was always looking for answers. There's got to be more than, like when I was about 13, I started looking for answers. There's got to be more than school homework, television, and eating, sleeping. There's got to be more. So I started studying different literatures, and I must admit, I wasn't getting the satisfaction I was hoping for. I even read the Bhagavad Gita at that time from the Gita Press. It didn't make so much sense. And then one day when I was 16, somebody gave me this Bhagavad Gita, and it's translated by Srila Prabhupada. We've got copies for if you'd like to take later. And about 2 years later, I didn't read it for a while. In the university, I picked up the book and I read the first few pages. I thought, wow, found what I was looking for. Fantastic. So since then, I've so slowly but surely dived into the practice of Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, so many names we have for this practice. And we got married about 14, 15, 16. I know. 36 years ago. That's right, I remember now. And I've been very blessed because my wife also has picked up this practice, and she does it much, much better than I do. So hence why yeah, we're always together. So oh, and we also represent the London Institute of Vedic Education. It's a charity we set up 2 years ago. And our principal activity was to go to schools. This year we've been to about 82 schools, and we've shared Hinduism with about 20,000 children. And it's been a real pleasure. These children are the most amazing personalities in the world. It's so fun-loving and lovely children. That's the main reason why we set up the charity, but now we're doing a few other things. Did you say something?
So, my name is Jayati. As I said, been married 6 years ago. We have 2 boys who are also practicing and following what we're as well in their own ways. There's various aspects to this practice. Like my youngest son, he loves the singing and playing musical instruments aspect, so he's really into that. So there's so many different facets to the Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism, and there's so many paths you can take really. I try and help as much as I can, but apart from the usual household chores. So again, it's nice to share this knowledge with anyone and everyone really. Thank you for allowing us to do that.
You're very welcome.
So it'd be good to know a little bit about yourselves, what you do and your name. And it's always good to have a personal sort of meeting. Maybe you can start.
My name's Trish. I work on the inpatient units, and I've been there for nearly 2 years.
As a nurse? Or
HCA.
okay.
My name is Bharatiya. I'm a healthcare assistant. I work on the inpatient unit. Worked there for 9 years. Yeah.
81 of the physiotherapists. I work in the community and in the hospital.
My name is Julian. I've just started on my 3rd week. I'm going out to the community as
Hello, my name is Patricia Masani, and I'm the Director of HR and OD here. So all the recruitment and retention stuff and volunteers.
My name is Amy. I'm one of the doctors here. I realised I've come to my 11th year. Almost exactly. We were about a week shy of that. I've been on your lips, until now that I'm now more in the community.
Okay. Wow. Thank you.
I'm Kelly, I'm a social worker on our patient and family support team, and then coming up on 7 months here.
Hi, I'm Polly. I am coming up on 5 years somehow. I don't know how that happened. And I manage the communications and the community engagement team. So a lot of what we do is about making sure we're going out into the community and talking to everyone who has an attachment about the ways that we can support them and the role that this is playing. Hello, my name is Alexandra. I'm the medical person assistant. I'm here since Valentine's this year.
I'm also head of patient family support, which looks after social work team, spiritual care, welfare benefits, and grievance service.
I'm Claire. I'm a counsellor in the patient support team in 4 years.
Oh, wow. I see nobody had a bad word to say because we have the head of HR here. Sorry. So, shall we? Oh, we have a few people, personalities online as well. Maybe we can talk about them when we do the questions, or what we can do.
Yeah,
them.
perhaps let's do that. Let's wait for the questions and do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Navi and I were discussing very specific questions about how your understanding of life interfaces with our understanding of life. So we transcribed that into a number of questions, 20 questions in total, to be able to cover all of this. So the first was to ask how you would prepare to speak to us about your own faith tradition, which you've already shown us actually in principle, which has been very helpful.
Right. Thank you. So we would, of course, seek the guidance of the higher authorities, the spiritual authorities, and the spiritual Lord, the Supreme Lord. We have been studying Hinduism for well over 30 years, and she's coming up to 40 years, and I'm only 21, but just to make it clear. We took guidance of a spiritual master in 1988, which basically means you make certain promises to a spiritual master that you will chant on beads, a mantra, which we will show you later. And you would follow some rules and regulations, and no smoking, no drinking, basically no meat eating, like that, no gambling, things like that. And in turn, the spiritual master would undertake to give you the spiritual knowledge and ultimately improve the consciousness to the level of God consciousness. So ultimately, which we'll talk about later, is how we go back to the spiritual world. And for the last 10 years, we've been engaged in spreading or sharing Hinduism with so many different types of communities. And the pandemic was quite interesting because we thought, how do we support our communities, and we can't go and see them, so we thought online is probably the best way, the only way, and that was through Zoom. And so we started doing seminars every day, and I think over the pandemic we did about 1,700 seminars now, and it was amazing actually, because we had to learn while we were doing the seminar. So in the day I would learn, and then at 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon we deliver a seminar. That went on for almost 2 years. So we've learned a lot, especially in the last 2 years. And yeah, prayers for inspiration. So this is the way we would prepare.
To whom do you give praise or seek wisdom from in preparation to speak about such an important subject?
Yes, we always remember our parents because they're the reason why we're here. And my parents have both left, but you still have you can never repay the debt you owe to your parents. The spiritual master, and again, you can never repay the debt one owes to the spiritual master. So we always seek their blessings and the line of spiritual gurus before him, the Supreme Lord. And in Hinduism, you may have heard, Hindus believe in many gods. Common sort of misunderstanding, because in the Bhagavad Gita, it describes that there's only one God, and he has many different names. We know him as Christ or Allah. We know him, Hindus know him as Krishna, Ram, Vishnu, same God. And he also takes many incarnations, many forms. That one God can become many, but it doesn't mean there are many gods, just one God. So we pray to the Supreme Lord for his guidance. And the scriptures. Scriptures are very, very important because they're the basis of knowledge. Gives us so much knowledge.
Is there a spiritual existence or world?
We definitely believe there is. And just to give you a bit of an idea, this is probably a little OTT. This is an amazing chart, which actually, if you can probably clicking, yeah, that's it. That's it, that's it. So we live in the material world. Originally, our home was in the spiritual world, but for some reason, we decided to separate from God. We want to enjoy independently of him. So the Lord is very kind. He's created a place where we can not necessarily remember him and try to become like him, try to enjoy like him, try to become controllers, although it's extremely difficult to control anything in this world because of something called death. So beyond the material world is a spiritual existence. The material world is a very, very tiny part of the overall existence, according to Hindus. The vast majority of the souls reside in the spiritual world, and there's many different layers within the spiritual world, which are described in our holy books, which obviously I won't go into now. But suffice it to say that 3/4 of the creation is spiritual. Small portion is the material world. A little bit like in towns and villages, cities, there's always a place where there's a hospital where those who are not so well reside there in order to get well. So we are in a hospital. This material world is regarded as an hospital. Our disease, we've forgotten God. The cure, remember God. So yes, we believe there is a spiritual existence, spiritual creation, spiritual world where we actually belong. We're a little bit like fish out of water. Fish out of water will always struggle, but in the water, it's fine. So we're living in an existence where we believe we are eternal beings, but we're living in a material world where nothing is eternal, everything keeps changing. So we're a little out of, I feel like a bit like fish out of water.
And we're always struggling here as well.
Always struggling.
The human condition.
Human condition, yeah.
How does the spiritual world then relate to the physical existence, which you've spoken about a little bit?
It's quite a complex area, but suffice to say there are 3 energies of the Lord. There's the internal energy, which is the spiritual world. There's the external energy, which is the material world. And then there's us, the marginal energy. So we can sometimes come under the control of the material energy, sometimes be under control of the spiritual energy. So at the moment, we've come under the control of this material energy. And how do we relate? How does it relate to the physical existence? You may have come across some like near-death experiences, for example, where maybe you can just click that. The patient is on the like operating table and about to be operated, completely unconscious, and he comes out of the body, or she comes out of the body. The soul then is looking at what's happening. And then when the operation is finished, they go back into the body. And then they can relate what's happened. I was saying this to a school one time during the assembly. And after the assembly, one teacher came to me and said, my daughter had this very experience. And she told me what the doctors and nurses were saying. And I never believed her. Now I'm going to go home and I'm going to question, what did the doctors and nurses say, so I can verify with the doctors and nurses. But it's I don't know whether as a doctor you may have come across situations like this where the patient would remember. So the soul leaves the body, but because the body is material, it's physical, and the time is not up for the soul to leave yet. So the soul goes back into that body again, which shows there's a distinction between matter and spirit. So the souls belong to the spiritual world, but due to forgetfulness of God, they're currently living in the material world. And here, there are certain principles which have been placed, a bit like disciplines, so that the idea of all this is to ultimately get us out of this cycle of birth and death. Karma, so Hindus believe in karma. If you do good, you get good back. And that's quite obvious. You fall off a high, fourth floor building, you're going to have a broken leg or two. So it's quite easy to understand karma. What you give, it comes back to you. So that's great. Thank you. We also believe in reincarnation because the soul is eternal. When the body gets old and diseased, the soul will leave the body and get another body. Now, that's reincarnation. What body gets depends on the karma of the soul, of the person. If you do good activities, you carry on your journey of self-discovery. If the activities are not so good, then there may be some punishment for some time. Generally, people do both, good and bad. So both have to be accounted for while you're doing one doesn't counteract the other. And this cycle of birth and death, which is what Hindus try to come out of through this process of moksha, they call it moksha, liberation. We want to get released from this cycle of birth and go back to the spiritual world. And this is a fantastic painting because it demonstrates how the body changes all the time, yet we remain the same. And I always ask this to school children, 3 questions. First question, how big were your bodies when you were born? They say, tiny. Do you have the same body today? No. But are you the same person? Yes. So that proves that you can't be the body, because you told me yourself the body has changed, but you've remained the same person. So what are you? So then I say that our scriptures explain that we are the soul, which is an eternal being. So they get it, they understand that logic very easily. And one of the ways how we can improve our consciousness is having a way of life which is non-violent. And an example of that is a diet, which is generally vegetarian. Generally, most Hindus would be vegetarian. No fish, no meat, no eggs. So it's something that maybe you can bear in mind when you come across a patient. I have to say, nowadays, not all Hindus stick to that diet. But yes, this is for the online personality who joined. This is the feast that you can have. None of those dishes contain meat, fish, and eggs. So anyway.
Is there a communication or relationship between spiritual beings or with ancestors?
Very much so. The concept of ancestors is very, very important in Hinduism. We can actually help our ancestors, our fathers, the forefathers, by performing various rituals. In fact, some of it is mandatory. Especially when the person passes away initially, there's certain things that are a requirement to be done to assist that person in the process of getting another body. So there are various ceremonies, and every year on the anniversary of the passing away of the person, there's a ceremony that needs to be done where you feed various elevated souls and you give donations in their name. Basically, that helps them it helps them free them of any obstacles they may be facing. So very, very important, very, very important. When we go to holy places, we have that opportunity to do a lot for the ancestors. So whenever we go overseas or to India, and we have our children or others with us, we always guide them that this is what you do when somebody passes away. Very important.
What is your understanding of a human being then?
Okay, in this scripture it describes 8.4 million species of life, and the human species are considered to be the rarest. We've achieved the human form of life. We've possibly been through every single species many, many times because of the eternity of the soul. But finally now we've got a human form of life where we can actually distinguish between right and wrong and make a big difference to this world. Maybe if you just click down. This gives a little idea of, we do believe in evolution of the body, not evolution of the soul in the sense of consciousness, sorry, evolution of the consciousness. So in the plant life, your consciousness is very low level, but it improves as you go into aquatic life, as you go into animal life. But still, you don't have the full consciousness of the human being until you reach the human platform. So it's rarely attained. Keep going. Keep going. Very rare to achieve human form of life. We are very, very fortunate, extremely fortunate to have this condition. Now, there was some research done recently. I can't exactly remember who did it, but the outcome of the research was that if any of the animals became extinct, then the earth would lose something. There would be a problem with some shortage in the environment. But if humans became extinct, there would be no problem at all. We just pollute the place. We're not very eco-friendly. So that means that humans have a different purpose in life. They have a purpose of understanding who they are. Self-realization, we call it. Trying to understand who we actually are. We're not the body. So what are we?
Some questions related to illness, firstly. What are your beliefs about the cause of illness?
In this current life, definitely lifestyle. Obviously, if one's going to smoke a lot, don't expect you to have, completely clean bill of health later on in your life. Natural consequence of your behavior, of your lifestyle. Behavior, as well, it's regarded in our Hindu scriptures that if one commits sins, you're reducing your lifespan. And if one does good things, you're increasing your lifespan. Karma, of course. Now, karma is a very, very intricate topic because one can never judge anybody. If somebody is not completely able, we can't go to them and say, that's your karma. Extremely insensitive. It may well be, but that's not for us to judge. It's not for us to give an opinion on. But karma has an impact. If the way we view disease is, or we view any disadvantage that we come across in our lives, it's better than we deserve. We are better than we deserve. On the basis that we know this is due to our karma that this has happened. And actually the suffering should be a lot worse, but the Lord has reduced. So in that way, we try to keep a very positive outlook on illness.
What are your beliefs about where illness resides? Is it physical, non-physical, both?
I think, yeah, the mind is a soul. In the Gita, again, it says in the 6th chapter, the Lord explains that the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. If it's not controlled, it's going to be our worst enemy. And if it's not controlled, it's going to be doing so many things which will not help the body and perhaps lead to disease. So the mind is, if we have a friendly mind, then we're going to interact well with this world. Physical issues, of course, play a role in illness. So people, they may never have eaten sweets, but they get diabetes. It's just one of those things. Just physical illness plays an issue in wellness. The digestive system is very, very important. And Ayurveda, the Indian system of care, a lot of focus is given on the digestion power that one has and to improve our digestion power. So the better we digest our food, the better we will remain, continue to remain in good health. The biggest issue is this spiritual disconnect. We have disconnected from the Lord. And even if we have the most perfect body, the perfect life, best job, great car, great houses, there's something called death, which will take it all away. It's like a complete stop to our life. So that is always going to be there while we're in this material world. So.
What then are your beliefs about how to cure illness?
Right. Although sometimes we take that excuse, oh, it's my karma. But we have to have a positive attitude to try to improve our situation. So we always recommend that we must make our best effort to become cured of the illness. Yes, it may be our karma, but so be it. But you still got to make your best effort, because who knows? Your karma might be to get well from that illness. So make the best effort. So that's how I. And in terms of medication and in terms of curing illness, because Hindus generally are vegetarian, they may avoid foods which have animal products. Like an example is gelatin in capsules. Some gelatin is vegetarian based now, so those are okay. I remember my spiritual master, he was on a drip in the last few days in his life. But he was so conscious. One doctor was putting the drip on, and he asked him, what's the content of that, of the drip? He said, there's some egg in it. No egg. I've never had dependence on egg in my whole life. I'm not going to start now. So they had to change the. So some Hindus may be particular. I would be. So what I'm giving you is perhaps a more stricter version. You may find other Hindus say, just get on with it. Get me better. Get me out of here.
But in a way, what they're doing is they take into consideration the consequence of doing something that they shouldn't be doing as well in part of the bigger picture. For them. Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
How do members of your community approach healthcare systems?
I would say Hindus use the healthcare system because it is a good system, no doubt about it. And I know whatever they say about NHS, I still feel that it's a very good system actually, especially when you compare it to other countries. We know what it's like in India, so there is a natural system of healthcare, and maybe you can relate.
The allopathy system, which is what the NHS is and we usually have here, is actually good for acute illnesses, emergencies mainly. That's what the Ayurvedic perspective is. If you want something long term, then the Hindus would try and follow or get the Ayurvedic perspective, which is balancing your body again. I had thyroid 18 years ago and underactive thyroid gland. So I started thyroxine in order to help me. Even taking that for 15 years, I still found that I had to be careful with my diet. I had to exercise a lot. Otherwise, my weight would just shoot up overnight, so quickly. So then I came to a point of thinking, okay, there must be something else. I can't take this for the rest of my life. So investigating the Ayurvedic methods, And they, I found that, they could help. So I did go to India and had a detox Ayurvedic treatment done for 5 days. Basically balances your body again to what it should be. And after that, they gave me the Ayurvedic version of thyroxine for a little while, a couple of months, while taking the normal thyroxine at a lower dosage over the 2 months. And then for the last 3 years, haven't had to take any thyroxine at all, either Ayurvedic or the allopathic version. Again, it's all diet related, and it's to do with your mental consciousness as well, a positive attitude. So, as I said, allopathic medicine is good for, for short term, but Hindus try and find what the, basic outcome would be if, you want to do something, make an impact on yourself long term. So there's alternative therapies. Again, we have a friend whose son is, again, he's 19 years old and he had been having really bad headaches. They did all the scans and everything in this country, couldn't find the reason for that. And again, they did some investigation and they went to India and they did acupressure, and that's helped him. So, there are different alternative therapies out there if you want to, but, as I said, allopathic medicine is good, up to a point, really. If, there are other avenues if you don't want to be taking allopathic medicine all your life.
Also, generally speaking, Hindus have extended families. So generally the mother and father, if they're elderly, would get cared for within the family and may not see nursing homes not so many. So that's something maybe there.
What are the emotions and thoughts, views and beliefs about these systems, about doctors and about nurses?
The medical profession is very well respected, and I think there's many Hindu families will have doctors within their families.
So all the sons as well.
Yeah.
So,
There's a great deal of respect for the nurses and doctors, healthcare staff. So, very well respected, I would say.
So, for us then, to start understanding, how do we care for a person who's Hindu?
Right. So, prayer is a very important part of Hindus' belief system. Prayer to the Supreme Lord and spiritual master. So prayer rooms are always good. I think you may already have for other religions. So they would be very useful. We're having religious books available, like the Bhagavad Gita. There's many religious books in Hindu tradition. Bhagavad Gita is the most famous. Visits to the temple, if possible. I was mentioning that we visited the Balam Home Care Center, and they're situated right next door to the temple. So for them, it's very easy, but it may not be so easy to take patients to the temple. But having regular visits from the priest can be useful if the patient would want it. Some patients may not, but that will be very helpful indeed, I'm sure. Hindus love singing. Hindus love bhajans, we call it, devotional songs. Most elderly people will have them, sort of off the tip of the tongue. So that's something is very much encouraged. When we go to the Bharatiya Care Center, we have a lot of singing. We do a lot of singing, and I love it. Having spiritual gatherings with the family ties are usually quite strong. So having that communal session with the family is always inspiring for them, for the patients, and helps them, I think, get better. vegetarian diet, and if they're not vegetarian, then more than likely they will want to avoid beef at least. So, and some are very strict, they would have no onion, no garlic, like we. So.
Questions about death and dying, then. Where is death and dying, or dying and death placed in your experience of being alive?
Right. Extremely important. How one leaves one body is so important. In the Bhagavad Gita, one chapter is dedicated to it. The person that the Lord is speaking to is Arjun. He asks in chapter 8, 7 or 8 questions. 7 of them, Krishna answers within one verse. The 8th question was, how does one die in this world? So Krishna spent 32 verses explaining that concept. And the most important thing is your consciousness when you leave. If that consciousness is clear and it's godly consciousness, then the destination is the spiritual world. Now, that's the Bhagavad Gita. This is only 700 verses. There's another book, a spiritual book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. That has 18,000 verses. Now, Bhagavad Gita tells us how to live in this world. And the Srimad Bhagavatam tells us how to die in this world. 18,000 verses explaining the concept of death. And that's, we spent, I think we had 300 seminars just on this one book, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's huge and it's so instructive, extremely important. Death and dying is a major part of the Sanatana Dharma's culture and philosophy. And later on, I've got a couple of examples examples given in the scriptures. Death is the final exam. Whole life we're preparing for that moment. This is one of the concepts in Hinduism. And the life is an exercise in preparing for death. It's our final exam.
It's a very common statement for many religious
is it?
ways of looking at things.
Okay.
Okay. Spirituality is about spiritual practice, and spiritual practice is preparing to die.
Brilliant. Oh, good. Thank you for sharing that. It's another common feature.
Whether it's exercised or not, I don't know. It depends on different people.
Oh, of course.
Would you say that death is natural or unnatural?
Whilst we're in this world, is natural, but actually the soul is eternal. So to the soul, it's quite a shocking time. Because the soul is eternal, and having to shift from one set of existence to another is very unnatural. But of course, now that the soul is in this world, death is a natural process. You have to go through it. Those who are self-realized, like I would say my spiritual master, he was not in any way disturbed by the concept of death. Even we were in the hospital and they were trying to cure him, and he was happy to take whatever, procedures that they had in mind. Yet there was not one moment where he was, I'm going to go. He was just like, no problem. And I always felt that there was something protecting him at all times. It was just an amazing feeling to be around him that time.
You made the comment about if your mind is, then you'll have a better transition. And I had also had someone explain some parts of the gameplay to me as well, with the related to a patient someone I was caring for, and actually often within that one patient, and I think for some who follow Hinduism as you do, that often they've not wanted some of the medications that we would offer because of the concern that we're also consciousness in that transition.
Right.
Is that something that you can help me understand further, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So, yeah, like there would be some medication, for example, something that would just put you to sleep, so that you're sleeping, you pass away.
Well, things not to be the purpose of putting you to sleep, but might make you feel if you were lucky enough to feel relaxed and engaged in a situation that might relieve the stress or might treat pain, but might make you a little bit sleepy
Right.
as part of that process, then it's sort of felt like there's been a more complicated decision to be made than I'm with my traditions fully understood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think when the patient is in particular distress, and they perhaps don't want the medication because it's going to perhaps put them to sleep, or it's going to change their consciousness. It's a call that you may have to make. That hang on, try to explain to the patient that you're in such an anxious situation. This will help you calm you down. So I don't think that's what the medicine would do. But I would say, if I was in a situation like that, very difficult to predict, very difficult to know what we would do in a situation like that. But my ideal situation would be, I want to die completely conscious. I want to know exactly what's happening, if the Lord allows it. It may be a little painful, maybe a little stressful, but I'd rather be under the protection of the Lord while I'm conscious. Because when you die in your sleep, how have you left? How have you left? We don't know.
But illness had made you less conscious after the process of the illness, would then that be less important in terms of medicines?
Possibly, yes. Very difficult to judge. Very
like
difficult.
all things, it's bespoke to that human being, but
It is. Yeah, I don't think there's one straight answer.
No, because in the Bharatiya it says that whatever your last thought is, that is the body that you will take. That's what we believe. So again, if you leave your body while you're sleeping, you don't know what your thoughts are eventually. Whereas if you're conscious, you can at least control those thoughts. So that's what that's what I think we would try and do. Try and control those thoughts, so that at least you have a safe passage to your next body.
I think the other part about that is also sometimes people are anxious and scared.
Right.
And sometimes physically their experience of their pain could be very real, but it could also be because they're so anxious and scared that feeling of the pain becomes uncontrollable. And sometimes some of the medicines that are used help take the person away from the anxiety.
Yeah.
But what about the case of having a patient who, when awake, is terrified? But the other option is to give them something that will take take them away from the terror, in a sense. But one of the side effects is they will sleep more, and so the danger is they may sleep into death.
Yeah.
What happens to that terror in a way?
Yeah. No, it's a tough question. It's a tough question, because if the patient is in such distress, you would have to suggest, please take the medication. At least you'll be less anxious.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that is considered, that is allowed and sort of suggested or explored.
I think you would have to give that option to the patient for sure. That look, this is there, please take it. We would advise you to, because you're so anxious. Then it depends on the strength of mind of the patient.
Okay.
But yeah.
What is the cause of death?
Right. Okay. In fact, there is no such thing as death, because soul continues to live and the body is already dead. Body is made up of 5 gross material elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. None of those are alive. Earth is not alive, nor is fire, nor is water. What makes this body look alive is the soul. That's the presence exists, and consciousness is a symptom of the soul. So in one sense, the body is already dead. Death is getting rid of that body, which is no longer useful, made up of the 5 elements, and you obtain another body. So the cause of death We may have on the death certificate heart attack, but ultimately the cause of the death is that person's life air is finished. In Hinduism, in the scriptures, it's described that it's not the number of years that you live, it's the number of how many breaths you take. That's what's determining your life. How many breaths you take. You're allowed a certain number of breaths in this life. When your last breath comes, that's the end, whether you're 5 years old or 105 years old. So, and that's determined, predetermined. It's predetermined. This is consciousness, how I think the question there was, what does death lead to? Yeah.
Death lead to afterwards.
Yes, so there's 3 factors. One is what consciousness, this is what Krishna is saying, whatever consciousness you have at the end of your life, that's what you're going to attain. And that consciousness will be what you've been thinking all your life. So this person likes to sleep a lot. Practicing. Likes to sleep a lot. The consciousness is that of a bear. Perhaps next life could be that of a bear. Sleep for 6 months a year. Person likes to show off their body. Okay. That's the consciousness perhaps of a tree, and you can be as a tree in your next life and be naked for 10,000 years, no problem. Likes to eat raw meat, tiger next life, likes to eat anything and everything, whether it's tasty or not tasty, or gone off or not, or fresh. Consciousness of a pig. This is a very generalized situation because everybody has mixed consciousnesses, but this is just giving those stark realities in a different way. The other thing that decides one's is our desires. But God will fulfill our desires. What is our desire? He will fulfill. And that's why we try to reduce our material desires and try to increase our spiritual desires. So consciousness, desires, and of course our karma. What have we done in our life? Those 3 factors. If we've been devoted to God, then our destination is going closer to the spiritual world. If we've done a lot of good karma, we may go to heaven. But in Hindu culture, Hindu philosophy, heaven is also still within this world. It's not good enough. Because from heaven, when our good karma bank account is nil, we come back to this world again, earth. And if somebody is bad, there may be a time where one goes to hell for a short period of time, but it's not eternal. It's a short period of time. You just suffer the consequences of what you've done and you come back onto earth again. And of course, most people have good and bad. It's a mixture.
What does your tradition teach about preparing for death?
Right. We have some examples in the scriptures. If you just go one more down. Right. If somebody is really terrified and you're finding them, really scared, and perhaps they're saying, hey, there's some dogs in this room. And there have been some real life cases of that. It may be these fellows here on the right-hand side. This is an example in our scripture of somebody called Ajamil. He lived the first 18 years of his life in a very pious way, but then he fell into bad company, and for about 70 years, he just became one of the most horrible persons in the world. He was about to die. He had a 5-year-old boy. He had called him Narayan. Narayan is another name of God, but by some amazing fortune, he called him Narayan. Now, he was about to die. He saw these Yamadutas. They're called the Yamadutas on the right-hand side. Really terrifying creatures came and they bound him with ropes and they were about to take him. And he called out to his son, Narayan! His son was the only one left. Everybody else didn't care about the old man. Who cares about him? But the 5-year-old boy was always around him. So he called out, Narayan. At that very moment, these handsome looking dudes turned up. They are the agents of Vishnu, or Narayan. And they said to the agents of death, you can't take this man because he's chanted the name of Narayan, God. And the agents said to him, the agents of death said, no, he didn't chant your Lord's name, he chanted his son's name. So we're taking him because he's a sinful person. And the Vishnu Dutas, the servants of Vishnu, said, no, you can't take him because he is, even though he may be calling out the name of his son, he still called out the name of God. Whether he intended it for his son or God, it doesn't matter. The name of God is so powerful, it has eradicated all of his sins. You can't take him. And Ajamil was on the deathbed. He was listening to the conversation and he was completely freaked out. And he was given a second chance. And he realized, right, for the rest of my life, I'm going to devote myself to God. Change of consciousness. So that's preparation. And this book, Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken because the gentleman who's sitting next to the one who was higher up, he was cursed to die in 7 days. He was a king. He made a mistake. He offended a sage, and the sage's son cursed him to die in 7 days. And he could have counteracted that sin, that curse, but he didn't. Instead, he went to the Ganges, and he waited. And there came a whole load of sages. And the one who's seated on the main seat there, he came and he started to explain to him for 7 days, 7 nights. He was cursed to die in 7 days. For 7 days and nights, he was spoken about how to prepare for death. And that's the scripture that we read or study. So the whole of that scripture is based on this point. So how do we prepare for that? We focus on the Lord and his holy names. We give charity, especially to the cow. I know time.
Apologies, I must go to a meeting.
I
Thank
know
you very much.
we've taken a lot of your time.
I-
But what about the food? You come back and take some food?
I didn't, no one told me about food. Oh, sorry, sorry, thank you.
Please come back. Are we are
We're running out of time.
So what should we do? There's a fair bit left.
Okay.
We can run through it quickly.
Well, I wondered whether you could do that, but to explain to us very practically, for instance, somebody who comes in as a patient.
Brilliant, brilliant.
What it is that we need to know for them to be able to look after them as they come in here. So what is important, but also what is important for us to know, to be aware of, so that they can die in the best place within themselves.
Yeah, that's very good. So this is a good one. Trying to steady their consciousness, make them feel at ease, very important. And it may be that they may want some family members around them, or perhaps a priest, just to help them through this period. That's good.
Or even some chanting or some music, that usually helps calm them down.
Yeah. Prayer and devotional songs, that's exactly what you're saying. Holy waters, this is Ganga Jal, and even if you put a drop in a much bigger pot of water, this is as good. So Ganga Jal is considered to be, it destroys sins. So, and most Hindus will appreciate that you've got Ganga Jal. Yes, please, bathe me with it or put it on my head. That's very practical.
And this is holy water that comes from the Ganges.
Yes, that's right. This is for you. And yeah.
Especially when the person is just about to die, if you put a drop in their lips, it's supposed to help purify them and help build their consciousness.
Okay, so that is done before a person's died rather than after a person's died.
Well, if you have the option before they die, but if you don't have that option, for some reason, it's sudden, no one's around. If you do that as soon as you can, it's still just as good.
That'll be the family.
Yeah.
Does the person need to be conscious?
Preferably.
Okay.
Preferably.
But
But if not,
yeah, I mean, on the day of the actual funeral, when they have the actual ceremony, they do that as well, so that at that time the person is not conscious, but you still put a drop, because it's said that the soul is still around there, it would help.
And there's something else that one puts into
Yeah.
the mouth as well.
Tulsi leaves, yeah. So this Tulsi is a very special holy basil. It's called holy basil. Very special plant which Hindus consider very sacred. So we've got dried ones. Dried are as good as the fresh.
And so again, one would put it underneath the tongue,
Yeah.
in the mouth.
Yeah, in the mouth.
Mhm.
And if possible, this is Tulsi, same the wood this time, not the leaves. So these are neck beads. If possible, you can put around their neck before they die. Before they die.
Again, all this helps, the consciousness of the person.
Oh, okay.
So if yeah, keep going. Yeah. So Tulsi beads, very useful. So these are for you. And also we have, these are which we chant on. So maybe a patient, they may already have this practice of chanting. I think most Hindus will have beads and chant it. So if you have this available and they don't, it may be something that would find useful. This is like the holy names are on this chadar, the blanket shawl. Putting that around them will make them feel very at ease if they're in this consciousness. Yeah.
Sorry, what do you mean if they're in this consciousness?
I.e., they're religious. If they're not religious, they might say, "Get out of here, leave me alone." What's this hocus pocus? What's the priest been telling you?
And it is the cloth that you can put on the deceased.
Oh yeah,
You can, yeah. A lot of people do that.
a lot of people do that.
No, all these examples that you're talking about, it's okay for, say, a medical or clinical professional to do this.
Absolutely,
Anyone.
absolutely. Yeah, no restrictions. The person might prefer the family to do it, but
If they're there.
if they're there, exactly right, exactly that. Very good.
Sometimes the family is so distressed that they're not in the right state to do all these things, so you might want to help them do that.
Tilak markings, again, this is a little bit more intense. If you see, I've got markings here. This is basically showing that we are demonstrating that we are servants of God. So some patients may be, very religiously minded, and they wouldn't mind you putting tilak mark. So that we've got.
No, it doesn't have to be exact.
Doesn't have to be exact. I mean, there's so many different types. If you go to the next pages, so many different types of
If there
markings.
is a priest available, if the family are at a distance,
Yes.
the patient can't do it themselves, can one of the nurses.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So basically, it's like the block of clay. If you just dab it in a heated water, make it like a little paste, and then just push it on. It can just be a dot or something.
Okay.
Yeah. What else?
So all these things help to mark that person is a servant of God, really.
The body is holy.
Yeah.
Prayer, very important. Reading from the Gita, especially chapter 2 talks about the eternity of the soul. And especially when a person has passed away, when we go to their homes in the evenings to do like devotional songs, we read from chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, which gives a lot of solace to the family, but also to the dying person as well.
And again, would it be okay for one of the
Yes,
nurses?
absolutely.
It's in English as well. So again, you have the Sanskrit verses, the translation to English, so anyone can read them.
My father, when he passed away, he was in a coma last week or so, and we read the Bhagavad Gita. And when he left, when they switched the machines off, he left. The Bhagavad Gita was being read. We were singing songs around him. There was probably about 5, 6 of us, maybe more. The hospital staff were fantastic. They allowed everything to take place, and it was an auspicious way to go. So,
Yeah, because they say the sense of hearing is the last thing. Because even in a coma, you can still hear things.
So would there be like particular chapters from the Bhagavad Gita that we would read, or just read?
Just read any, but chapter 2 is good. And there's verses 11 to 30. You won't remember this. But actually, any part of it, it's like a mango. You bite anywhere in the mango is sweet. Bhagavad Gita is the same. Anywhere you bite, it's sweet. So, what are the rituals required for dying? I think that's the next one. If possible, patients be around, the family being there, and generally speaking, there would be hopefully no tears. The idea is don't want any tears to keep the soul bound. If you have tears, the soul will be thinking, oh, I should just stay here. But there's no body to stay there with. So if we sing in God's names, it just gives our soul that initiative. Okay, let me go.
To detach.
Become detached. Yeah. And the rituals, we sort of went through that. Ganga Jal, Tulsi, clothes, markings. In terms of the funeral, generally Hindus will prefer cremation, isn't it? And there's 2 exceptions. One, when there's a small baby who passes away, they're usually buried, and a sadhu, a saintly person whose body is considered spiritual, he would be buried as well, unless he didn't want to be. And support, usually there's strong family support, and we usually get called out to sing songs and read from the Gita when somebody dies, at least for a period of about 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah. Ideal situation to die, fully conscious of the Lord, in a holy place if possible. Of course, that might be a little tricky, and we have to definitely avoid these servants of death. Anybody who's looking extremely anxious, possibly there is that issue going on.
Okay.
What is essential to know? Importance of the Lord and his names, devotional songs. If somebody is in a really critical state, we've done this many a time where we put like these chanting of the holy names next to the ear of the person who's passing away. So just playing all the time, 24 hours. And you can control the volume. We keep it very low so that it doesn't disturb anybody.
And these are all things that we can discuss with the patient before.
Perfect.
So that would feel okay with
people. Perfect.
People be open to that.
I think if you bring that up, the family and the patient will be thinking, wow, you really know your stuff. You really care. Please don't go. Take some food.
No, we will be.
Okay.
It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Grab something before you go.
Could open that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Sure, other people do.
I think we've covered it.
Is anybody?
Actual death, once death happens, what happens after that in terms of preparing the body?
Right. If it was in India, Hindus would have their body cremated the same day. So as soon as possible, the cremation should take place. Of course, there's a procedure to go through, getting the death certificate, and, the authorization by the doctors, etc. So it takes a few days. The sooner the better. Sorry?
It's as soon as possible
And cremation. I've never been to a burial of a Hindu body. So, yeah. Is that okay?
Are there any rituals around the preparation for the cremation? You mentioned some conscious water.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Not particularly, but they would want to obviously dress them in the way they like to dress them. The rituals will be mainly in the funeral parlor. That's where some of these items are again come into play, the Gangajo and Tulsi and this. So it'll be probably out of your jurisdiction by that time.
Is there anything that that we could do in a practical way to avoid somebody who's really benefit from coming to the inpatient in the hospice, whether it's to die or for control of their symptoms, that they may see or assume might be a barrier to them receiving care in the way that they would choose.
So just to understand the question, the person is coming into the home.
If they're coming into the hospice,
Yes, in the hospice.
say in the ward, and or it had been offered to them as an option,
Right.
is there anything that we could do in a kind of a very practical way to make it clear, or not even make it clear, but to accommodate their wishes, or make it clear that we're able to.
What should we be saying or doing?
Yeah.
To feel them comfortable,
Somebody
make them
saying,
comfortable.
"Oh, yes, I will die there."
Yeah, it's a good question because. Oh,
You could ask them to like pictures of the bars around them,
oh yeah.
you know, some music, you know, in the area that they are.
Familiarity
Yeah.
to what they're used to would help. So if perhaps there's a room, each patient has his own room. So in the room, you can indicate to the patient that they'll, we can.
They can do what they like.
Yeah, you can put your own, you can tell your family can bring you probably won't be talking to their son or daughter with the person as well, if that's possible, and explain that we will look after their needs of the Hindu patient. And, we know the different things that you have a vegetarian diet, you would like your family to come regularly and maybe sing some songs. The priest, you may be able to engage a priest to come and recite Gita with you. So that would all make them very comfortable also.
So it's about speaking about these things outright at the beginning for us to do.
Yeah.
For us to have the conversation quite purposefully to say, we would like you to come in based on the medical needs, knowing that you're also Hindu, what we would like you to do, bring in images that you feel comfortable going to do with spirituality. We welcome you and your family to be here as long as they need to, and need to let us know what that looks like. We understand that some of the conversations we may need to have will be with other members of the family, not directly with the patient, and that you'll guide us on that. We would have a vegetarian diet for you. What about things like ablutions? I understand that running water is important in Hinduism, and people wish to be clean before they pray, for instance, may not want to have a bath, which would prefer to have a shower. Are these things correct?
Depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person. I mean, if the person's bedbound, then again, that's not an option, is that? Yeah. But again, the family can take care of that.
Okay.
That aspect.
So then if it's about saying to people, we would like to accommodate your family to help look after you while you're here, but that would need to be a conversation between you and the nursing staff.
Correct.
Possibly.
Correct. Yeah.
That would go down well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You find there's probably a lot of reluctance from Hindu families to come into homes. And the extended family probably say, no, we'd rather look after. But there are situations where it's so hard. And the only option really is for specialized nursing service.
Yeah.
Specialized medical needs.
Do you know many Hindu?
Very many. No, and yet our area covers many Hindu communities.
Right.
So clearly people are choosing not to come in, and there may be a number of reasons. There are a number of reasons for that, definitely. But I think partially hospice, although it is a Western concept
Yeah.
isn't actually a Western idea at all. You have
Mhm.
places like hospices in India everywhere as well, so there's definitely more that we can do to include people and to encourage people to come here. I think the other thing we're noticing is actually maybe for us, it's not about encouraging people to come into the hospice, but better for us to look after people in one's own home.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand a little bit more about how to engage with families to do that. Because I think there's a hesitancy from families to let people in.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, because, yeah, I mean, like, when his mother was at home, we had carers coming in, to help us. Because we couldn't do everything again, and, some of the carers were Eastern European, so they could understand the culture a bit more.
Okay.
So again, I think it's understanding what they need at home as well. Like my mother-in-law, she would really love to have a bath every day, because that's what she's used to, they have a bath every day before doing anything, even eating or anything, because first thing, you do is you get up, you have a bath, and you do your worship, and then you do everything else. So that's what they used to. So again, understanding those little intricacies of the way of life, maybe work out a routine with them, which should help, but both parties really.
Is there anything about the hospice that would put off people coming in or engaging with our services?
I don't
Anything that you're
think
doing wrong?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because we've known a few people, like one of his aunt's father's sister had to go into hospital because she had cancer. That was the only place that could, that could take care of her situation. And again, the staff there were really good. They could understand exactly what was needed. Sometimes, I don't know if you have only certain visiting hours or not, but sometimes it helps if it's flexible, for visiting hours as well, because, maybe, that person needs more family to come in at more frequency, rather than say just in the afternoon or something like that. Because that's what they use at home, they have visitors coming in all the time.
Any more questions? I still have any more questions, but I wonder maybe we can actually record something separately to that.
Yeah, we can, definitely.
Thank you.
They'll go bored.
Yes. It's like a good place to start.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for that.
thank you.
Very much.
Now you're gonna have to finish between the 7 of you. I love the attitude.
Morning stuff.
Thank you, everybody.